Have you ever felt like you're stuck in a cycle that never ends? That constant struggle with bills, the feeling that there's never enough money and that luck always seems to choose others? Well, Mia Robinson knew that feeling all too well. For years she lived in scarcity, not just financially, but emotionally. She worked hard, but nothing seemed to flow. Until in a moment of desperation, something unexpected crossed her path and changed everything. But before I tell you how Mia completely transformed her life using the law of attraction, tell me one thing. Have you ever wondered if what you feel and think every day could be creating your reality? Maybe just like her, you're also closer to abundance than you think. You just haven't realized it yet. So get ready, because this story will inspire you to look at money, life, and yourself in a whole new way. Oh, and before we begin, subscribe to the channel, like it, and comment on where in the world you're listening to this story from. This way you'll help this energy of prosperity spread to more people who need to hear it today. Now, let's explore the journey of Mia Robinson, the woman who discovered that the power to change destiny resides within the mind. Mia Robinson was the kind of person who lived counting every penny. Every beginning of the month was a silent battle against bills that seemed never-ending. The rent was late, her credit card debt was heavy, and her heart, it was always heavy. Sometimes she looked out the window and wondered when life would stop being a race for money and start flowing smoothly. The days were repetitive, and Mia found herself trapped in a cycle of survival. She worked hard, but the money slipped through her fingers like fine sand. Every effort seemed insufficient, and discouragement began to whisper that perhaps she wasn't cut out for prosperity. Yet there was a spark within her, something small, almost imperceptible, that refused to be extinguished. Nights were when Mia thought most. While the world slept, she reviewed her choices, imagined paths, and wondered if the problem lay in the world or within herself. The fear of loss was constant, but hope, though timid, insisted on appearing when she least expected it. Sometimes she daydreamed. She imagined a life where she wouldn't have to count to buy something simple, like a coffee or a gift for herself. It was just a daydream, but in those moments, Mia felt something different, a gentle vibration, as if the dream was saying, "This is possible." And it was precisely in this mix of exhaustion and desire for change that something began to move, even if she didn't yet realize it. Life was silently preparing a new chapter, one that would be born from the mind, the heart, and a force Mia couldn't yet name. Since childhood, Mia had heard that money doesn't grow on trees, and that you have to suffer to achieve something in life. These phrases, repeated for generations, took root deep in her mind, shaping her way of seeing the world. Without realizing it, she carried the weight of beliefs that limited what she believed she deserved. It was like walking around blindfolded, thinking the darkness was all that existed. Every time something went wrong, Mia reinforced the idea that fate wasn't on her side. Maybe I wasn't born to be rich, she thought silently. This invisible programming made her actions always revolve around the fear of loss, not the joy of creation. The universe responded to her vibration, and unknowingly, she attracted more of the same: scarcity, worries, blockages. There were days when Mia tried to dream bigger, but soon the voice of doubt would arise. Who do you think you are to want so much? This voice seemed to come from within, but it was only an ancient echo inherited from the past. Even without realizing it, she was constantly at war with herself, half wanting to grow, half believing she couldn't. In conversations with friends, Mia noticed how everyone spoke about money with tension. They complained about the government, work, prices. No one talked about abundance. They talked about survival, and the more they listened, the more they believed this was the only truth. It was as if the entire world had become accustomed to vibrating at the frequency of lack. But inside Mia, something was beginning to stir. A subtle, almost rebellious feeling whispered that perhaps there was another way to live. A lighter, more open way, more connected to something greater. And unbeknownst to her, that thought would be the beginning of the change that would transform everything. As time passed, Mia's life seemed to repeat itself in an endless cycle. The more she struggled, the further away stability seemed to become. Money barely covered the basics, and every attempt at change seemed like 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. It was as if the universe was stuck in repeat mode, always returning the same result. Bills piled up on her desk, and that mound of paperwork became a symbol of everything she feared: failure, helplessness, and fear of tomorrow. Sometimes she found herself staring into space, wondering what it would be like to live without the pit in her stomach at the thought of the end of the month. But soon she'd return to reality, and the grey routine swallowed any glimmer of hope. Scarcity didn't just live in her wallet, but inside her. It was in the way she spoke, the way she thought, and even the way she walked. Every thought of lack transformed into energy, and this energy seemed to attract even more difficult situations. It was a vicious cycle, fueled by emotions she couldn't yet control. And even without understanding, Mia felt something was wrong, that it couldn't be a coincidence that she was experiencing the same challenges over and over again. There was a pattern, something that repeated itself because somehow she was also repeating it within herself. It was as if life was trying to teach her something she couldn't yet clearly hear. Until one day, in the midst of another sleepless night, amid scattered bills and confused thoughts, Mia looked up at the ceiling and asked a simple but powerful question. A question that echoed in the silence, opening a portal to something completely new. That night, Mia felt the weight of the world fall onto her shoulders. The silence in the room was almost deafening, broken only by the sound of the clock ticking away, time seeming to drain away along with her strength. She cried silently, tired of pretending everything was okay, tired of fighting so hard and staying in the same place. For the first time, she felt she no longer had the energy to try. It was in that moment of total surrender that something changed. Through tears and confused thoughts, Mia looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "What am I doing wrong?" She didn't expect an answer, but inside her something different stirred, as if her entire life were about to change direction. It was a collapse, but also the rebirth of a new consciousness. As her body begged for rest, her mind began to question everything. What if the problem isn't the outside world? What if it's what I believe about myself? This idea kept hammering away at her, planting a seed that would soon germinate. For the first time, he realized that perhaps true change began within. In the days that followed, Mia felt strangely more awake. Desperation gave way to a quiet curiosity. She began to observe her own thoughts, her own words, like someone examining an old map in search of a forgotten path. Something told her the answer she sought lay not in a new job, but in a new state of being. And it was then, in the midst of this deep reflection, that a synchronicity occurred, one of those coincidences so precise they seemed guided by something invisible. A small sign that would make Mia realize that the universe had always been listening, just waiting for her to learn to listen. One day, while aimlessly browsing the internet, Mia came across a video that seemed to have been made especially for her. The title said something about the power of the mind and how thoughts shape reality. Normally, she would have scrolled right past it, but something about that sentence made her stop. It was as if the universe had given her a gentle nudge, whispering. For the first few minutes, Mia wasn't entirely convinced. It sounded like self-help talk, the kind that promised miracles, but as the narrator's gentle voice explained that whatever you feel and think, you attract, she began to feel something different, a mix of curiosity and hope. And for the first time in a long time, the impossible seemed possible. The words from that video echoed in her mind for the rest of the day. You create your reality. This phrase repeated itself like an invisible mantra, accompanying her on the bus, at work, in the shower. She began to observe her own thoughts and realized that most of the time they vibrated with fear, doubt, and lack. And then she understood that the first step would be to change what was happening inside. Over the next few days, Mia dove headfirst into the subject. She read books, attended lectures, and heard stories of people who had transformed their lives. With each new story, her faith grew a little more. She felt she had found something that could finally change the course of everything. And so, without realizing it, that simple video became the turning point in her story. The seed had been planted, and the patient universe began to align everything so that the transformation would blossom in its own time. In the early days, Mia found herself torn between belief and doubt. Part of her wanted to trust what she was learning, but the other part laughed silently, dismissing it all as fantasy. Does positive thinking attract money? Oh, sure, she muttered sarcastically, trying to shield herself from disappointment. After all, she had tried everything and nothing seemed to work for long. But something inside her persisted. Even without fully understanding, Mia continued watching videos, reading inspirational quotes, and taking notes. It was as if an invisible force kept her curious, quietly telling her, "Keep going, you're close to discovering something big." Skepticism was there, but it was no longer the only resident in her mind. As she delved deeper, Mia began to notice small coincidences. Simple things like finding a coin on the street, receiving a message from someone unexpected, or hearing a song that spoke exactly to her feelings. And no matter how much she tried to explain it rationally, there was something mystical in the air. Something that seemed to be playing with fate. Sometimes she laughed to herself. Other times, she was moved. It was as if the universe was testing her faith, showing her crumbs of magic to see how far she could believe. Each sign was a silent invitation to look beyond what met the eye, and little by little, her fear of being naive began to transform into a desire to truly try. It was in this intertwining of doubt and faith that Mia took her first conscious step toward change. A small step, but one filled with intention, the kind of gesture the universe watches closely, ready to respond with equal courage. As the days passed, something began to change in Mia's outlook. She no longer saw the world the same way. She began to realize that every thought, every emotion, and even the words she used carried their own energy. It was as if the veil began to lift, revealing a power that had always been there, silent but constant within her. Life suddenly seemed more alive. When she caught herself complaining, Mia would take a deep breath and think, "Is this what I want to attract?" Gradually, she began to replace complaints with small expressions of gratitude. It was a subtle but powerful shift. Instead of saying "it can't happen," she began to say "not yet." Instead of "it'll never happen," she began to whisper, "it's on its way." And this simple shift began to shift the vibration of everything around her. People noticed a new lightness in her. Even without any major external changes, Mia radiated a new calm, as if carrying a secret only she knew. The chaos outside continued, but inside, a new world was forming, one in which she had control over how she reacted, and that in itself was liberating. One night, looking in the mirror, Mia felt something profound. For the first time, she wasn't trying to change the world, but herself, and this awareness brought a sense of power she'd never experienced before. It was as if she'd finally found the switch that turned on her own light, and as this new vision grew within her, life began to respond in subtle ways, small signs, unexpected encounters, and opportunities that seemed to appear out of nowhere. It was the universe confirming that when the mind awakens, reality awakens with it. Mia began to realize that every word she spoke was like a seed sown into the universe. And without realizing it, she had spent years sowing scarcity with phrases like "I never have money" or "this is too expensive for me." This realization hit her hard. It was as if she had lived her entire life nurturing the wrong soil, and now finally she understood how to plant new soil. Determined to change, she decided to rewrite her own vocabulary. She began to affirm with conviction, "I deserve prosperity. Money comes to me easily. Abundance surrounds me every day." At first, These phrases seemed strange, almost forced, but the more she repeated them, the more natural they became. Their vibration seemed to warm the air, as if the words were alive. Mia began to watch her words in the little things. When someone complained, she remained silent or responded with hope. When she felt fear, she took a deep breath and told herself, "It's okay, the universe is taking care of me." It was a new language, the language of faith, trust, and conscious creation. Over time, she noticed that even her body reacted differently. She slept better, felt lighter, and started the day with a positive, almost electric energy. Words now weren't just sounds, they were portals that connected her to what she wanted to experience. And the more she vibrated at this new frequency, the more the world began to reflect what was happening inside her. Without realizing it, Mia was becoming the narrator of her own story, and her words, once simple and scattered, now carried power. A power that would soon show its first results in ways so subtle and magical she could never have imagined. It was then that Mia discovered the transformative power of gratitude. At first she thought that being grateful for little was almost like pretending everything was fine. But little by little, she realized that gratitude wasn't about what you had, but about how you felt. She started with the basics: a roof over her head, a hot cup of coffee, a new dawn, and suddenly, these simple gestures began to change the vibe of her days. Each morning, Mia wrote down 3 things she was grateful for. Sometimes they were small victories, like sleeping well or receiving an unexpected smile. Other times, it was simply being alive, and curiously, the more she was grateful, the more reasons the universe gave her to be grateful. It was as if gratitude opened invisible doors to new blessings. In moments when fear returned, she would take a deep breath and whisper, "Thank you for all that I have, and for all that is coming." These words had the power to calm her heart and bring a sense of calm confidence. Mia began to realize that focusing on lack made her suffer, but focusing on gratitude made her flourish. Over time, the small blessings multiplied. A job opportunity, a bill paid with ease, a well-timed compliment. Everything seemed to flow more harmoniously, and within her, something expanded. A deep peace, a feeling of being in tune with something greater. And it was in this new vibration of gratitude that Mia began to dream differently, no longer wishing to escape lack, but creating from joy. And from this new feeling, the next step would be born: the power of visualization. With a lighter heart, Mia began experimenting with something new: visualization. At first it seemed like a simple exercise in imagination, but she soon realized it was much more than that. Every night before bed, she closed her eyes and saw her life as she wanted it to be: clear, colorful, and real. She saw herself smiling, paying bills with ease, traveling, feeling the wind of freedom on her face. She didn't just see it, she felt it. The coolness of the note in her hands, the sound of the new apartment door opening, the scent of fresh coffee on a quiet morning. Mia discovered that the secret wasn't to dream it with desire, but to feel as if she were already living it. And the more real it became in her mind, the more possible it seemed in her heart. At first her mind tried to sabotage her, remembering her debts, her fears, her past. But Mia persisted. "I choose to believe," she said softly, her face illuminated by the soft light of the lamp. Gradually the images began to flow easily, as if the universe were participating in creation, revealing details she had never imagined. With each session, Mia noticed something curious. She woke up more confident, more excited, more alive. It was as if the energy of these visualizations transcended the mental plane and began to shape her physical body. Situations seemed to align, the right people appeared, opportunities arose effortlessly. Her mind, finally, began to command matter, and, without even realizing it, Mia was about to witness the first concrete results of everything she had been practicing. The universe, silent, was already moving toward her, ready to prove that what is seen with the heart sooner or later becomes reality. The following days began to bring small surprises. An old client she'd forgotten about came back to her, offering a new job. A distant friend paid a forgotten debt. Even a banknote appeared folded on the sidewalk right in front of her feet. Simple things, but for Mia, they felt like miracles. It was as if the universe was saying, "I heard you." With each sign, her heart fluttered with gratitude. Mia began to see these events as direct responses to her visualizations, and the more she gave thanks, the more signs appeared. A song with the right lyrics, a random conversation, a video that answered her exact question. Everything seemed to connect, like pieces of an invisible puzzle. These small synchronicities awakened a sense of wonder in her. The world, once cold and predictable, now seemed magical. Even setbacks seemed purposeful, as if each event were carefully orchestrated to teach her something. Mia began to trust, not in luck, but in alignment. With this new awareness, she learned to observe instead of complain, to feel instead of control. Each day brought a new reminder that the universe communicates not with words, but with subtle signs present for those who choose to see. And Mia was learning this new language with an open heart. But the path to transformation is rarely a straight line. And just when everything seemed to be flowing perfectly, old doubts began knocking on her door. The universe once again invited her to strengthen her faith before receiving what came next. Just when everything seemed to be going right, Mia found herself confronted again by an old enemy: doubt. It was subtle at first, a fleeting thought, a hidden fear, but soon it crept back into view. What if this is all a coincidence? What if it suddenly ends? The old voice of fear, silent for a time, began to whisper again in the shadows of her mind. These insecurities came disguised as caution. She found herself questioning whether she was dreaming too big, whether she should put her feet on the ground. But deep down, Mia knew it was just the old pattern trying to survive. Internal resistance arose every time something new was about to blossom. It was the final test before transformation. Some days Mia felt tired. She stopped visualizing, stopped being grateful, and the fear of missing something would creep back in, like a cold fog covering her heart. But this time, something was different. She already knew the way back. She knew the mind could deceive, but feelings couldn't. And it was the feeling she chose to nurture, even when reason tried to doubt her. On one of those uncertain nights, Mia sat up in bed, took a deep breath, and recalled the small proofs the universe had already given her. Every sign, every synchronicity, every subtle miracle, none of it could be chance. "I choose to believe," she murmured, her eyes closed, as a tear fell, light but full of faith. And it is in that instant that something changed. The heaviness began to dissipate, and a gentle calm washed over her. The resistance didn't disappear completely, but it lost strength. And in the space left by fear, a new energy began to form. The energy of those who choose to trust, even without guarantees. After so much back and forth between faith and doubt, Mia realized that true belief was a choice, not a coincidence. And on that sunny morning, she decided she would trust, regardless of any external evidence. If everything is energy, then I choose to vibrate in the certainty that everything is working out. These words, spoken aloud in front of the mirror, seemed to seal a silent pact with the universe. From that moment on, something inside her changed. She stopped waiting for signs and began to live as if everything were already unfolding. She stopped watching time, forcing results, and began to focus on feeling. It was as if she had let go of the reins and allowed life to lead the way. And curiously, the more she let go, the more everything flowed. Mia began to notice the beauty in the details: the gentle morning breeze, a hot cup of coffee, a smile exchanged with a stranger. Small things, but all loaded with meaning. She understood that trust wasn't about closing one's eyes to reality, but opening one's heart to the invisible. And in this surrender, life seemed to breathe along with her. Even without major immediate changes, Mia felt a different kind of peace. Her worries were fading, and anxiety no longer ruled her days. It was as if she had found a new way of being, lighter, more aligned, more trusting in the natural flow of things. Faith was now a constant presence, not a desperate peaceful surrender that the universe began to act more clearly, because when the mind stops controlling, destiny begins to unfold. And Mia, without realizing it, was about to cross the turning point that would change everything. With her heart anchored in confidence, Mia began to act differently. She realized that thriving wasn't just about positive thinking, but about aligning attitude with energy. Instead of waking up complaining, she began the day with a thank you and a smile. She stopped acting out of desperation and started acting out of inspiration. It was a dance between feeling and doing, and this harmony changed everything around her. People noticed the difference. At work, Mia exuded an inspiring calm. At home, the atmosphere felt lighter. Even the sound of the wind through the window seemed to whisper that something had changed within her. And indeed it had. Her vibration. What had once been tension and haste was now presence and intention. She did what she always did, but with a completely new energy. Instead of chasing opportunities, Mia learned to prepare for them. She studied enthusiastically, took care of herself, and kept her house organized, like someone getting ready for an important guest. Because deep down she knew what manifests physically is a reflection of what is planted in the invisible. And she was cultivating abundance in every gesture, no matter how small. The money hadn't arrived in large quantities yet, but Mia felt it coming. It was a silent, almost palpable certainty. Each aligned action seemed to open a new door. The difference was that now she wasn't acting out of fear of lack, but rather out of the joy of creating. And this simple adjustment completely changed the direction of the flow. It was at this light and confident pace that a new opportunity began to approach. Something unexpected, something that seemed tailor-made for her. And the most curious thing, she didn't have to chase it. The universe came to her. It was on an ordinary afternoon that life decided to surprise Mia. While drinking coffee and answering emails without much expectation, a message caught her eye. It was a proposal to partner on a creative project. Something that combined exactly what she loved to do with what she knew how to do well. The kind of opportunity that seemed to have been designed especially for her. For a moment, the old fear tried to resurface. Is this real? Will I be able to do it? But Mia took a deep breath and remembered everything she had learned. If the universe brought me this far, it's because I'm ready. And with a racing heart and a slight smile, she replied, yes, It was a simple email, but charged with powerful energy, the energy of accepting one's worthiness. In the days that followed, things began to move quickly. Ideas flowed, connections emerged, and everything seemed to fall into place perfectly. Mia felt like she was no longer pushing life forward, but rather being guided by it. It was as if an invisible door had opened, and behind it, a new world of possibilities awaited her. With each small step forward, she felt a mixture of gratitude and wonder. It wasn't just about the money coming in, but about the meaning of each event. Everything seemed orchestrated with purpose, as if every piece of her journey had led precisely to this point. And for the first time, Mia felt like she was where she was always meant to be. The unexpected had happened, but it seemed so natural that it was impossible to call it luck. It was alignment. It was the universe's response to a vibration of faith, patience, and surrender. And little did she know that this was just the beginning of an even greater transformation. The days became lighter, almost magical. Mia began to see the fruits of all she had cultivated with faith and patience. Money, which had previously seemed to elude her, now arrived naturally. New clients, invitations, and opportunities multiplied, as if the universe had finally understood the language she had been speaking silently for months. And deep down, Mia knew it wasn't luck. It was vibration. She found herself smiling to herself as she remembered the night she'd imagined exactly that. The brightly lit apartment, the soft sound of music in the background, the positive bank account, the sense of security. It was all there, right before her, just as it had been in the visualization. It was as if the physical world was simply catching up with what already existed in her mind. Each achievement was accompanied by a profound sense of worthiness. Mia no longer chased anything. She attracted it. Everything seemed to flow like a river, finally finding its natural course. Money was no longer a burden, but a reflection of her inner expansion. Thriving had become a state of mind, and even as the material results began to emerge, Mia realized that the real change was happening within. Fear had transformed into confidence, and doubt into gratitude. She felt guided, accompanied by an invisible force that had always been there, waiting for her to open her eyes and see it. It was then, looking back at all she had achieved, that Mia smiled tenderly. It wasn't about the money itself, it was about who she had become to attract it. And the universe, grateful for her faith, still had more to show her. One evening, sitting on her porch, with a cup of tea in her hands, Mia looked up at the sky and felt a shiver run through her. It was hard to believe how much had changed. Not just her circumstances, but the fear that had once paralyzed her had transformed into a gentle, almost luminous force. It was as if she had been reborn into life, and every breath now held meaning. Memories of the past returned from time to time, but they no longer hurt. They served only to remind her of where she had come from and how much she had grown. She saw herself as two versions of herself, the one who lived in scarcity and the one who had learned to create abundance. And between these two was a chasm of consciousness, a chasm she crossed with faith, one thought at a time. Mia cried, not out of sadness, but out of gratitude. She cried for believing when everything seemed uncertain, for listening to her intuition when the world told her it was madness. Each tear was a silent thank you to the universe, which had guided her step by step with synchronicities, tests, and miracles. She understood now, nothing happened by chance. Ordinary days began to feel extraordinary. A simple sunset, the sound of rain, a smile from someone on the street. Everything seemed like a reminder that the world had always been on her side. Mia lived in a constant state of wonder, as if she saw life through new, broader, more conscious eyes, and in that gentle silence, between sips of tea, she understood the true purpose of transformation. It wasn't just about changing what one has, but who one is. And this profound understanding would make room for something even greater, the desire to share everything she had learned with the world. With a heart full of gratitude, Mia felt she couldn't keep this transformation to herself. It was as if the universe was asking her to share what she had learned, like an echo of light that needs to multiply. So she began to share her journey. She wrote texts, recorded short videos, and shared her story with friends. Each word came from the heart, and the hearts of those who listened seemed to respond. At first, Mia didn't imagine the reach her words would have. People began sending messages saying they identified with her journey, that they were also trying to change their own vibration, that they had felt hope after hearing her. And that moved her deep. It was the cycle of energy completing itself. What she had received in faith, she now returned in inspiration. With each new story she received, Mia realized that her story was more than a coincidence. It was a living example of the power of the mind and gratitude. And the more she shared, the more she felt abundance grow in every way. It wasn't just about money, it was about purpose, about service, about touching lives in a genuine way. Her words were unhurried and unpretentious. They were simple, sincere, and full of truth. And because of that, they resonated deeply. Mia now understood that when someone vibrates with love and faith, the universe uses that person as a channel. She didn't speak to impress, she spoke to awaken, and each soul touched, was a seed planted. And it was in this act of sharing that Mia realized something profound. The more she gave, the more she received. The more she spread light, the more her own life became illuminated. And without realizing it, she was about to discover the truest meaning of prosperity. As time passed, Mia realized that the prosperity she experienced went far beyond money. True abundance lay in the peace of waking up, feeling light, in the gratitude for existing, in the constant feeling of being on the right path. She now understood that money was just one way the universe reciprocated her vibration, but the true reward was feeling fulfilled. Before, she believed that thriving meant having more. Now she understood that it meant being more. Being more aware, more loving, more confident. It meant being present and in harmony with what life offered. The mind that had previously raced after things now floated in tranquility. Mia no longer struggled to achieve. She simply allowed what was hers to come naturally. The days were simple, yet full of meaning. Every gesture, every encounter, every moment felt like a gift. She learned that when the heart vibrates with gratitude, even the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Money came, yes, but effortlessly, without fear. It was a consequence, not a goal. And this freedom was the greatest symbol of prosperity that could exist. Mia understood that everything she sought outside was always within. That abundance is a reflection of the love we cultivate within ourselves. And the more she aligned with this truth, the more the universe responded with generosity, in gestures both small and grand. Prospering was, after all, a way of recognizing oneself as part of the whole. And it was in this state of silent fulfillment that Mia began to see life as a continuous flow of giving and receiving. And from this new perspective would come the conclusion of her journey, the moment when everything she had experienced would become an eternal message. Today, Mia lives with a peaceful heart. Not because everything is perfect, but because she's learned to trust, even when she doesn't understand. She looks back fondly on the past, recognizing that each challenge was a push from the universe to bring her here. Nothing was in vain. Not the tears, not the nights of doubt, not the fear. Everything served to shape the woman who now shines from the inside out. Sometimes she still finds herself thinking about how it all began. A simple video, a moment of despair, a sincere plea to heaven, and she smiles. She smiles because she understands that the universe always answers, but we can only hear it when we silence our fear and open our hearts. Her life is living proof that the impossible is only impossible until someone believes. Mia walks lightly, spreading the energy that transformed her own life. Where there was once scarcity, there is now overflow. Where there was haste, there is calm. Where there was fear, there is faith. She has become the very manifestation of what she once dreamed of, and her example resonates as a reminder that we all carry the same power to create realities. She understands that true wealth lies not in things, but in the awareness of deserving the best in life. And that when we vibrate love, the universe conspires in favor of our dreams. Abundance is no longer a destination. It has become a state of being, and in this state, Mia discovered the secret. Everything we desire already exists. It just waits for us to believe. And so your story doesn't end. It just expands, like a wave of light that inspires those who cross your path. Because in the end, thriving isn't about hoarding, it's about awakening, and those who awaken never go back to sleep. Mia's story is a vivid reminder that prosperity begins within. When she changed her thinking, the world around her began to change too. Scarcity gave way to confidence, fear turned to faith, and life, once burdensome, began to flow with lightness and purpose. She learned that true wealth lies not in how much you have, but in how much you believe you deserve. And perhaps, at this very moment, the universe is waiting for you to do the same, to stop looking at what's missing and start being grateful for what already exists. because that's how energy moves. That's how abundance responds. Everything you desire is already on its way. You just need to align your heart with the right frequency. So if this story inspired you, take a deep breath and remember, you can too. Life doesn't play favorites. It just responds to the vibe we emit. And if Mia was able to transform her own reality, you can write your own new version, starting today. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it right now. Let's spread this energy of prosperity and faith together, because when one awakens, many awaken, and maybe the next chapter of this transformation will be yours.